Okay, it looks like we already have some chat. Okay, and I'm getting tons of automatic replies to the people that I sent the deck to. Okay. Hopefully everyone on this call is received a copy of the deck from Monday night, as well as the just a little Excel worksheet that tells you which chapters or which materials you need to study. So, so we're up to 50. I think last time I covered this class, I think there were about 55, 56 people that joined. So we might just give, if y'all don't mind holding on just a few more minutes, we're not going to take up a lot of your time this evening. This evening is going to be for review, but we don't actually have any materials that I'm aware of that would be used for the review other than just the 4 decks that have been covered so far, and then those sections of the PMBOK that are associated with creating high-performing teams. So myself and my backup, Melissa Ricks, are on the call this evening, and we're really kind of left at a little bit of a loss of what to cover other than just any questions that you all have. Or if there were any sections, if there was any material covered during the first 4 sessions that, you know, if you have questions about, you'd like more information, you know, feel free to ask. It's interesting.
And Deborah, I muted everybody so that they will just need to unmute themselves when they want to speak. That way we can cut down on the background noise.
Perfect, thank you. Well, here's Phil.
You're welcome.
I know Phil just dialed in. Phil, we're going to be doing review this evening for the first 4.
Yes, we are.
Sessions, but we didn't have any material that we were aware of, and so we're assuming we're just going to ask people if they have questions about the first 4 sessions and the PowerPoint presentations that were recorded.
Absolutely. We can also use some of our materials from the book, like the reader book that we recommended, and get their brains a-stirring. And hopefully that'll create a good dialogue in which they'll ask questions, and maybe at the same time that we're discussing that, answer a lot of the details that are in the slides that we currently covered, and some material to our future slides that we will be covering as well.
Okay. I'm not, I have to admit, I'm not familiar with, you said that there's some materials we shared about the Rita book. Is that on the wiki or something?
No, we had recommended the students that the Rita book, because it continues to have good material. So we can use that as well, but if you'd like, I can go ahead and start, and then you can prepare, or if you already have something.
I really don't have anything other than I was planning to just pull out the PowerPoint decks for each evening that were shared previously, and really just ask if they had questions about any of the material.
Sure. Why don't we do that while I start this off, and then you go ahead and you follow after me?
All right. No,
Is that all right?
Take it away. Take it away.
All right. So for those of you that I don't want to shock you, because probably one of the shocking terms that we used was homework, which I'm sure everyone was so happy and joyful to hear that you're going to have homework, and some of you haven't had homework since, well, I don't want to say that, but for a while maybe. So I'll be nice and not say anything, because I know I'm old as old could be, so I'm probably one of the oldest on this call, but that's okay. So First of all, what I'd like to do is first state, if there are any contractors that are on this call, please be sure to remove yourself. If you are in a conference room with our AT&T employees that are listening on this call, please remove yourself from the conference room as well. This training is specifically for our AT&T family. And maybe in the future you will become family, but for now, just please remove yourself from this call, and I certainly appreciate that. All right, for the rest of us, I've been monitoring the calls, and just so you know a little bit about me, I used to be the Director of Education, and then Brian and I have been working in partnership for years, and I wanted to focus on doing some other things, and then of course Brian took over the education as education director, and I think he's done a better job than me as well. But I think one of the things that I'm going to say, which is very true, please go on our website and look at the Meet the Instructors, because all the instructors that we have here at the PMN group, we're all volunteers. We're doing this because most of us just have a heart to teach. We want to teach. We love to teach. Some of us started as young and well, in my case, when I had hair and I was just a Sunday school teacher. I've always loved to teach, and when I became a global PM and started traveling around the world, I was still teaching project management to any who wanted to learn about project management, and I did it for free because it helped. It helps everyone on your team, right, whenever you have these projects and you use those projects to teach. But people do have a desire always to do better, to improve, and it also helps their job career. But most of us are just looking, we've been around the block a couple of times, and we want to hopefully be a help to you in what you'll be doing for your future, because as in my case, in a few more years, I'm going to retire if my wife allows me to live for that long. So, and we enjoy, again, we just simply enjoy that. So please go on the website, take a look at some of these instructors that we have, because truth be told, as you already know, Deborah and that's on here, and Melissa Ricks that's on here, I actually learned a lot from them, and I borrowed their stuff and then called it my own, and developed a pretty good reputation from learning from them. So, so we've got some really excellent folks, and the thing about this is, our instructors have been there, did that. They many of them, if not most of them, wear the T-shirt that we've just about done everything. How can I summarize that? Probably this way. We've done so much for so long with so little that we can do practically anything with nothing at all. And that's a true statement in many of the projects that we've been involved in, globally and domestically. And many of you know exactly what I'm talking about, dealing with your projects where stuff just came out of the woodwork because, what's that term we use? Well, I was going to sing, if it wasn't for bad luck, we'd have no luck at all, but I'm not going to do that. But Murphy's Law, right? Everyone knows Murphy's Law. Whatever can go wrong will go wrong. So, and many of you that are on this call have experienced that and had to come up with some out-of-the-box solutions, right? So these are the type of instructors that you have on here. And again, many of their hours that they volunteered, they've done it on their own personal time. Okay, so, which is pretty cool during the winter because at least as Northerners ain't going anywhere at single digits out here. But we all just love to do this. So that's who we are. So putting that aside now, what I would like for us to do is to remember a couple of basics here. PMI and PMN, we are teaching you the fundamentals. What PMI has put out, we've been doing for, some have been doing for decades. Yep, I could certainly say that, plural. Have been doing this for decades, and we have seen, I don't know about Melissa and Deborah, but I started out with PMBOK 4, and then went to 5, and now we're at 6. And I've got all my PMBOKs here at my house, and it's been a very interesting change, a positive change. So, so in this, one of the things that we are always telling you is this is only teaching the fundamentals, nothing more. So those of you that are looking at this material going, well, wait a minute, I would never do it that way. Well, you're right, because you work for AT&T. And at AT&T, we have rather unique ways of doing things. And I'll just leave it at that. But we're not teaching you the AT&T project management at all. And if that's your mentality, you need to change it immediately. Because when you sit down for that 4-hour exam, there is not one word on that exam that's going to reference anything about AT&T. We're teaching you basically the fundamentals, which means in order for you to pass that exam, you have to split your knowledge in half. What do I mean by that? Your AT&T knowledge, move it all to the right side of your brain. That which we're showing you, the fundamentals that PMI is teaching as project management professionals, move that to the left side of your brain. And for the most part, keep them separate. The exam is not going to be difficult when it comes to you answering questions that are definitions. And PMI has even told us for decades that folks do not fail the exam because of the definitions. Folks do not fail the exam because of the formulas, which you have to memorize, right? And my recommendation has always been look for short videos on those formulas on YouTube. YouTube is my place to go. And you'll see some really excellent 5 to 7 minute videos on the formulas, the concept of that formulas. And PMI tells us that nobody's ever failed the exam because of formulas. However, where people have failed the exam are the situational questions. And if you hear the instructors reiterating certain things, yeah, you probably really want to write that down and practically memorize it, okay, for the exam. And the reason we do that is because it's hard for any of us that have been in project management for a long time, and now many of you now, or all of you on this call, want your to have that PMP certification, which I'm sure everyone is aware of how important that PMP certification is from a global perspective and domestically, of course. So when you take all that into account, there's several things that you want to take from what I just stated. And one of those key items is you're learning a new language. That's the best way I can recommend. Think of this as a new language that you are learning, because it is not the same that many of you know. And I do know some of you on here, not really well, but I know you by reputation, good reputations. And I know some of the outstanding stuff that you had to do in order to be successful at projects that were very challenging. So in all these years that many of you have had, you're going to make the same, or you may make, I hope you don't, you may make some of the bad guesses that I did. So when I first took the exam, I failed it the first time. Why? Well, I actually on my, was when I was working for Motorola, one of my peers just happened to be a PMI instructor. And him and I, we would meet in certain countries and go over all this material. And one thing he kept on emphasizing to me is, Philip, do not mix these fundamentals with what you're doing as far as your project management skills. If you mix them, you will fail. Well, guess what I did? Out of habit, when the situational questions, I wasn't sure, well, I relied on my experience to answer the question. Thus, that guaranteed I answered incorrectly. So please keep this in mind as you're going through all this material, putting together your 4x4 cards and all this other stuff. Yes, you do want to take a lot of these new phrases that we're using and start using them on your daily. Use them at your job. That's great. And when you talk to one another in your small groups, great. Talk to each other and bring this out. When you hear someone that makes a reference and it sounds more of their statement is leaning toward AT&T methodology, don't hesitate to help them out and say, you may want to reword that this way from a fundamental perspective, because again, this is what you're learning, right? So please keep that in mind. And I think one of the best ways, at least from the feedback that I've received in the past, in the old days, if some of you may know this, AT&T used to, on global projects, they used to interview project managers. They would take a pool of project managers and they would put out like a job request to project managers in AT&T and say, we got a project in Brazil, la-di-da, and we're looking for folks to interview for that project, okay? And then they would have a pool of project managers. And then, of course, they go through interview after interview, and they keep coming down to the final two individuals, right? And then they make that, they finally decide the best qualified person for this particular country, right? And some of the old information that I actually acquired concerning how AT&T operated, I actually got that information when I was in 10th grade in high school, because my business teacher, well, she just so happened to be a retired AT&T manager. She was a director, and she retired as a director, and she started teaching, and I was blessed in that she was teaching one of my classes, and that's the first time that my mom looked at me with a smile, because I got A's in that class. I won't talk about my other grades. Okay, so please keep this in mind. Why am I framing it this way? Think of your exam as being the interview, and that's it, right? In an interview, and I've had to go through this with other companies as well for projects, you know that you're going to get definition questions. You're going to be asked about concepts. How do you also, there'll be operational questions, out-of-the-box thinking questions, and all that, right? So in this, what we're showing you, what we're demonstrating, what we're going through is for your interview, okay? Now, the last thought that I'd like you to remember is a project. Think of that interview process is your exam as being that interview process, and the project that you are about to acquire is a $100 million project in a far, far away land across that big pond of ours, okay? And why do I frame it that way? I frame it that way because if you look at the material, yes, it is all fundamental, but I've used all these fundamentals in many of my projects that I've managed overseas, or Latin America, Europe, in Asia. I've used them all. And they really can work in some places real well, in other places maybe not so well. But these fundamentals that you're learning here, they are sufficient enough for you at the end of this, and with a little bit of experience, to go out and take on a large $100 million project on your own. And another thing I would like you to remember, the definition of project management is not your definition of project management. You look at the definition of project management, and let me just ask this question. Can I get a volunteer to give me their definition of project management? Please don't read it word for word. Don't even look it up. Could someone give me, announce your first name and then give me the definition of project management, your version of it? Anyone? Don't be shy, or I may have to pick you out. No volunteers? Charles Harris, can I get your definition of project management, please? Do you have us muted?
Well, this is a shy group.
I
They
have
are
everyone muted to cut down on the background noise, so students don't need to
Oh.
unmute themselves.
No, but,
Yeah.
but folks
Yes.
can unmute themselves. Folks
Yes,
can
they
unmute
can.
themselves. Yeah.
Okay. Charles, could you give me the definition?
I don't know if Charles is here. Is he here?
Yeah, Charles Harris is on. He unmuted. There he goes.
Right. So
All right.
you're a leader of the team that's going to manage a project start to finish.
All right. Excellent. Someone else.
You organize resources, including people and things, and manage the flow and deadlines, and you're responsible for everything that has to do with the project being complete.
Okay. Absolutely. Anyone else?
Yeah, this is Alexis. As project management is leading a process to ultimately achieve goals and objectives set by the project team.
Okay, excellent. So here's going to be my definition, which is PMI's definition. A project manager, when they take over a project, that project has a start and an end date. Now, why am I specifying that? Because many of us think we start a project and then from what the project is handed off to the operations side, and we think that it's still a project, which is not true. So it's very important when you take the exam that you think of project management as you starting the project and you ending the project. That is a very short definition, but that is the definition of project management. Why am I specifying that? Because many of us have been taught a lie. We have been taught that project management is everything you do when you're involved in a technology project, which is false. Okay? We know that politics and whenever there's new leadership, I'm not talking about ours, but whenever there's new leadership, it is in the nature of that new leadership to try to redefine things in their image, which means they screw everything up for us, right? So in this, when you look at the exam, think of the fundamentals of project management, the definition. You have a start and you have an end date. The reason I asked you to think of this as a $100 million project is because most, I will say, a very large number of organizations, corporations that are out there, they actually assign a person to handle a project. And this is how PMI teaches it. One chief, one person that is large and in charge, one person whose name is on that, the word just escaped me. What's the document
Project charter.
Thank you. The project charter, right? Which means you're large and in charge, right? Because you're dealing with a $100 million project. So all the companies out there are looking for you to do is to complete that project. Later, once the project is complete, you hand it off to the operations people and they'll run with it. And then you get sent, as Dave always used to do to me when I was at Motorola, he would give me that smile walking down the hallway, which meant in his back pocket, I knew he had a ticket for me to go somewhere. Right? So think of what I just said in preparation of that exam, right? Think of the definition of the project manager. You start and you end that project. You're large and you are in charge. And of course, you get yelled at by everyone as well, which is the whole fun kind of part sometimes about it, right? Again, start and finish. These are very key points that I would like for you to remember as you move forward in this. Again, your exam, when you take it, you're not going to fail the exam because of the definitions. You should by now have already started your 4x4 cards. Some of you, I know, you've gone on a website and probably purchased 4x4 cards. That's okay. That's cool. But as part of that, please remember that in this, you're not going to fail the exam because of definitions, and you're not going to fail the exam because of the formulas. Because we're going to grill those formulas into you, and we're going to go over them repeatedly. That at the end of these 10 weeks, it'd probably be bleeding out of your brain onto your pillow, right? So think about that. One of the good things that Deborah's brought up here is when you look at the exam, what I would call situational questions would be the process questions and the business environment, right? The business environment is a little new, right, to a certain degree, but within the peoples, within the process, there are situations besides the definitions that you're going to be given. And if it hasn't been stated yet, when you sit for the exam, there'll be 4 possible answers. One of them is going to be outlandishly false, and you'll figure that one pretty easy. Another question will be like 50-50, but then there'll be 2. There'll be the correct answer, and there'll be a very close correct answer. But there's only one correct answer, right? So I want you to start thinking along these lines and be aware of this, right? Because in these domains that they're now teaching, one of the things that you have to take into account, which is the difficulty that many are having, that I had when I first took the exam and failed it the first time, because I didn't think, or I did think situational questions, but I use my experience to answer them and not. Now, I know I've taken a long time in bringing this up, but the reason I bring it up is because those individuals that took the exam and didn't pass it the first time, we sat together and we reformulated a plan so that they would separate what they knew as project managers from what PMI is teaching, which is only the fundamentals. Any questions that anyone may have over this, which I just went over? Now's the time to ask. All right.
So I had a quick
Yes,
question.
go ahead.
So the main thing that we need to know in terms of the definition of project management, because it kind of is broad, or there's a lot that can go into it, but the main thing that we need to remember is that it has a definite beginning and end. Is that the key there?
That is the key. Yes,
Okay.
absolutely is.
That's the key to the definition of a project. Yeah.
I'm sorry?
But the key to the definition of what is a project, that has a defined ending. For project management, I guess it depends on what you're defining, Phil.
Right.
Project management.
No, that's a good point, because you will have situational questions. I call them situational questions, where you may see a mixture of project management and program management in the question.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think they. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just saying
wondering,
true.
is there some
No,
type
go ahead,
of
Deborah.
guide that shows you, you mentioned cards to create, some type of cards for study purposes? Is there something along the lines of some type of guide as to the specific verbiage that more specifically needs to be known?
Well, here's my recommendation on that. Just grab yourself some blank 4x4 cards, and we have asked that you review, for those of you that have already paid for your material, you have all the material available to you, right? So as we go through those slides, you want to look at those slides, record that information, and turn those into 4x4 cards. Because in the slides, it gives you definitions. It talks about process. So that's what you want to add on your 4x4 cards. And I always recommend that you put them together manually. your own handwriting, because this is part of how you begin to retain in your mind what those definitions are. But the slides have, the way PMI has changed it, the slides now have the definitions, the processes all together on those slides. And it's usually the instructor will emphasize what those definitions, what those situations are, why they're presenting.
Yeah, as I had mentioned, I think maybe a couple of nights ago when I did the class, it's kind of a good engagement tool too, to stay engaged with the presenter and the information that they're presenting. If you have your index cards out and you kind of write along, like Phil just said, you know, when you see a definition pop up, write it down on your card. But kind of to answer your question, William, you can purchase flashcards if you just wanted to purchase them through the PMI, but we're just suggesting that it's going to be far more helpful to remember the information if you write it yourself. It's really interesting, but it makes a very big difference when you write the information yourself on a flashcard. Or you can, the other one is a good study tool when you're reading the PMBOK. It's a bit dry, right? So as you're reading through the PMBOK, you're going to encounter definitions and processes too. And that's a good time to get out your index card and just write down the definitions and outline some processes and their predecessors, inputs, and et cetera, as you're encountering the information. So then you can have it on a card. So when you have time later, you can go back through it. They're great. They're a great study tool. That's what we're suggesting.
And just to clarify, when you guys are talking about, you're talking about as we're going through what we've been going through as far as the such as this slide here, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah, you said, okay, you know, this is the definition of X, Y, and Z. Okay, I just want to make sure I'm highlighting the right stuff. Okay.
Yeah. Well, and the reason I brought this particular slide up is because the test has changed or is changing quite a bit. So when I took the test and Philip took the test, others have taken the test in the past, there were these different knowledge areas. And the test was focused on a certain portion of those other knowledge areas, like, you know, 20% was from, I don't know, initiating. I don't remember how it was exactly before, Phil. I don't know if you remember, but it was, the percentages were kind of different. So you kind of, if you were going to kind of try to game the test, right, you were going to, and 60 or 70% of the test was on a particular knowledge area, you definitely want to focus on that particular knowledge area and those processes. This, now we know that the PMBOK, that the test is going to be a bit different and the focus is going to be in these areas. So when you see that it's 42% people, and these first 4 sessions have been mostly about people, that's what you want to, you know, if you're going to have 50% of the test under your belt, if you really understand the processes, right? So that's why I brought up this particular slide. So, because I think everybody wants to try to understand, you have to work towards the end, right? You're always working towards the end with the end in mind, and the end in mind here is 100% on the test if you could do that, but to also understand where the focus is going to be. And so those definitions that Phil mentioned, those definitions and those processes are embedded in these domains that are shown here.
So let's start off with one, and with one of the questions, because I've already viewed this on the slide before, and I'm just going to ask a question, and you give me what you think the answer is. All right.
Students. Yeah, and feel free to just unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you. All right, so here's my first question. Who has the most power in a projectized organization? And I'm going to give you 4 possibilities. Who has the most power in a projectized organization? The project manager, the functional manager, the team, or they all share power?
That's definitely the project manager and a projectized organization.
Yeah, project.
And why would you say that?
The project manager is the highest of the hierarchy within a projectized organization in comparison to a functional. In a projectized organization, everything goes through a project manager only, whether if it's good or bad. And at the end of the day, whoever is within that project, they don't have a home once the project is finished.
Excellent. Yes. And the key word there is a projectized organization. I do hear some noise in the background, so if you're not talking, could you please mute yourself? That way others can...
I'm trying to watch that, Philip, because I've been muting people. So, yes,
okay.
Please, if you're not speaking, please mute your phone. And again, I just keep scanning. When I see somebody who's doing background noise, I will mute you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for that answer. And I'm going to ask for someone else to answer the next question, because I don't want the same person always answering the same question. Okay. We definitely want a group participation. So let me ask the next question. Okay, this is a good one. This is fun. Okay, all of the following are characteristics of a project except, and this is a good question because I know several in previous that took exams last year that told me about this question. All of the following are characteristics of a project except. Characteristic 1, it is temporary. Characteristic 2, it has a definite beginning and end. Characteristic 3, it is, oh, I just lost my monitor, but I'll keep going. It is interrelated, or it has interrelated activities. And 4, it repeats itself every month.
4.
Anyone like to take that one on?
Yeah, this is Bill. It's the number 4.
It repeats itself every month?
It does not repeat it. You want to know which one is not part of it, right? That it doesn't repeat itself. What is it, right?
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. I'm looking right at it, and you're right, and I'm, okay. Yes, okay. You are right.
Thought I was losing my mind for a second there.
Well, I lost mine a long time ago, so thank you for that. We do know it is temporary. Thank you. We do know it definitely has a beginning and an end, and it does have a lot of interrelated activities, okay? And some of you may have experienced how many interrelated activities you have. For example, on a greenfield project, if you're adding a new mobility network in a country, you're looking about 5,000 minimum interrelated activities, right? And when you think about that, you begin to understand why there are still many projectized organizations out there, or within a corporation, there's a separate department of projectized or of project managers, because that's how they're going to approach certain technology projects. Right. So, and I've been involved in technology projects all my life, so I could answer to that and construction. Anything beyond that, nah, maybe not so much. All right, great one. All right, let me ask the next question.
Hey, Phil. Hey, Phil.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Hey, so I have a question about how Agile relates to that definition of a project is not being repeating.
Great question. Class, who would like to try that one?
I would say there's one project. I would say there's one project, but there are a lot of repetitive, like iterations within the project.
Okay, I could accept that to a degree. Anyone else?
But there's a different product or service or result in those repeated processes, in those repeated iterations or sprints. Excellent.
Excellent. So you obviously have have knowledge on Agile, and the word that I always use, which many folks who have been around since before Agile, being Agile, I know it sounds corny, being Agile was key to software development, was it not? I mean, there was the traditional, what we call the waterfall process, which, I mean, okay, I'm sorry, I had a PTSD moment there with the old days, but there was the waterfall process where you start from left to right, whereas Agile doesn't start from left to right. That's why it's called Agile. You may not be starting in the beginning in certain projects. So from an Agile perspective, what you're looking at is, and what makes Agile so much better in these new days, is the fact that we know, and we've always known, that nothing is from left to right. Nothing is, or not everything is sequential, right? I mean, if anyone has a large technology project where everything has gone just right, please let me know who they are, because they will be heralded as the best project manager on the planet. Because I don't know anyone that ever had a perfect project that went from left to right. Agile takes that into account. And when you think of Agile, you want to definitely look at the definitions for Agile, because those definitions, once you have those definitions down, you're simply not going to miss any of the Agile questions. I could say that with 100% surety, because we have an Agile training class, and all those that have taken our Agile training class, none have failed the exam when they took those. But of course, the Agile training class is only 120 questions, and 20 of those questions are not even counted for your exam. So, but anyway, I don't want to, I diverted maybe too much. Does anyone else want to add something to what was stated? All right, I'm going to ask the next question. Oh, yes, here we go. Which of the following best describes the major constraints on a project? So before I give you those, will somebody at least define what a constraint on a project is?
Time.
Yes, there is a definition. Go ahead.
Time, budget, and the triple constraints.
Yes, you and I, yes, you're right. That was interesting on the slides that PMI, even though it's taking other considerations, has brought back the statement, which I was surprised at, but I was in a way glad. It talks about the triple constraints. True. But what is a constraint?
It could be materials, lack of information.
What do you mean by materials?
You know, if a material is, you know, coming late, or it's too early and it stays in the shelf. It could be labor. If everyone, you know, if they need to add additional resources to, because they're late on the project and they're bombarding the project with extra labor or whatever it could be. There's like so many things as far as constraints go.
Well, hopefully a good project manager will ensure resources don't come early, but you brought up a very good point about resources. If you start looking at building material, again, when you're taking the exam, remember the statement I made earlier, this is a global project. You're somewhere in a far, far away land that doesn't have a 7-Eleven or a Home Depot down the street, right? So much of your constraints could be building material doesn't come on time, even though in many cases, a lot of your material when it comes to technology is not coming from within that country. Excuse me, a lot. Okay, I don't care if you had a project in China. I've had one in China. I've had one in India. And as much as both countries claim to have everything, well, that's never been the truth. Okay, and many of the project managers that I still talk with today tell me this, yep, nothing has changed in that area, though they're trying to change it. So building materials, technology, since we're talking technology, yeah, your material, you may be ordering antennas, and your antennas are coming either from Germany, Brazil, they could be coming from Slovenia, at least the ones that I remember. But though they have guaranteed you that those materials are coming on such and such a date, what if they don't? I'm sure we've all heard of, well, here in America, we call them hurricanes. We call them tornadoes. And across the pond, a little different, a whole lot worse as well in the storms that they get, right? So those could impact your dates. So when we talk about constraints, we're not only talking about some standard stuff that may not come on time, but we're also, you mentioned resources, you're right. What if you have certain engineers that are supposed to come in country, yet they don't arrive at that right time? So these are things to consider about constraints. Now let me ask the question. Which of the following best describes the major constraints on a project? Scope, member of resources and cost, or scope, cost, and time, or scope, time, cost, quality, resource, customer satisfaction, or, last one, time, cost, and the number of changes. So I'm going to go through that one more time. Which of the following best describes the major constraints on a project? Scope, number of resources and costs, or scope, cost, and time, or scope, time, cost, quality, risk, resources, customer satisfaction, or the last one, time, cost, and number of changes. Who would like to volunteer to give me an answer?
I believe it's the last one.
And the last one would be time, cost, and number of changes. Why would number of changes be considered a constraint? Every project is going to have changes, and your team is so agile and so good that when you see changes come, you already have a plan on how you're going to make those changes, so they shouldn't cause any great disruption. So C would not be the correct answer.
Probably the second one.
The one with customer satisfaction?
I'm sorry, there was two people speaking at the same time?
This is Wendy. I think it's the one that ends with customer satisfaction. I was trying to write down as you were saying them.
Why customer satisfaction? You're picking C, which says scope, time, cost, quality, risk, resources, and customer satisfaction. Why would you include customer satisfaction in this as part of your answer?
Well, I personally think customer satisfaction should be in there. It should be for all projects.
Okay. Does anyone want to challenge what she just said? This is how we learn.
I think it's the second one, scope, cost, and time.
Yeah, I think it's scope, cost, and time. The right one. Yeah.
Okay. So let me give you the answer. She was absolutely 100% right. The answer is scope, time, cost. We know that is the triple constraints. However, years, I think, let's see, we're in 6. In version 5 of PMBOK, they finally expanded that to include quality, risk, resources, and customer satisfaction. That's something you may want to remember. Why customer satisfaction? Well, if you study your material, and some of your questions may even fall along this line, if you're not satisfying the customer by meeting all your milestones, in the real world, you're getting a ticket to go home. You're leaving the country, period. No and ifs or buts about it. Once the customer, the president of that company calls the president of your company and says, no, this person is not working out. They're not meeting this, or they're not answering my questions correctly, and they're always la-di-da, la-di-da. They come up with 1,000 reasons. Then you're 99% chance you're leaving, right? Customer satisfaction is an absolute necessity for each milestone. It's an absolute necessity for each of the tasks that you have, right? So when you look at this answer, it is all-encompassing. It is not only the triple constraints, scope, time, and cost, but it has to include quality. It has to include risk. It has to include resources. All these are constraints. And another consideration is, if you're looking from a resource perspective, how many companies make the mistake of only having one subject matter expert available? What happens if that person loses, God forbid, they lose someone in their family? What happens if they become sick? If they are the key, you're going to have a problem in meeting dates and meeting the quality. So that was excellently stated, and I made it sound like you didn't answer correctly, but I wanted to do that to stir the pot a little bit, because I didn't want people to get a little lackadaisical there, right? So thank you for that, and thank you everyone for your input. Did you have something else?
No, I was gonna jump in with a question. Oh, unless we're still talking about that one. Sorry, go ahead.
Nope, go ahead. Go ahead. Ask your question.
No, I was gonna pose a question to the group.
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, okay. So kind of switching train of thought for a moment, going back to creating teams, because it's just one of the things I covered the other night. Everybody just jump in to name the 5 stages of development that teams go through. This is a pursuant to the Tuckman ladder. We didn't discuss it as the Tuckman ladder, but it's those 5 stages that of development that teams will go through. If y'all remember. Anybody want to jump in?
It's I don't remember the first one, but then the next one is storming, norming, performing, and adjourning.
Awesome. Okay, well, what do you do before? What's the first thing you do to create a team? Forming. You got it. Yeah, forming, storming, norming, performing, and adjourning. Thank you. So I don't know, so back to you.
Wow,
question.
That was excellent. Boy, that brought back memories. Absolutely.
Yeah, we covered it the other night, so I thought I'd bring it up. But yeah, jump in there. I'll look for some other ones.
Yeah, you certainly may want to really know that one. Absolutely.
Yeah. Hey, I was going to ask, since we're getting to, almost at the top of the hour, or we are at the top of the hour, Deborah, did you want to do a quick break, or you just want to keep going?
Oh, yes. Deborah, you still there?
Yeah, for the students, you guys want to take a quick break?
I mean, it's fine with me. We'll take 5 minutes, good, or do we think we need 10?
If we could take 10.
Okay.
That's
so
usually what we do.
Okay, great. Well, it's exactly the top of the hour. So we'll meet at 10 minutes after the hour.
All righty. Thank you much.
All right.
Thanks.
All right, are we all back? Let's see. Oh, we have 63 participants. So it's 10 after the hour. I don't know if Phil's back yet. Melissa, do you want to maybe present the class with a few questions?
I don't have any prepared questions, so you and Philip can just keep going.
Oh, okay. Well, how about our students? Do any of you have questions about the material that's been covered in the last 2 weeks? Any areas in particular you want to talk about? Okay, quiet class. I guess I could think of a question. I mean, when it comes to problem solving, this is probably under controlling resources, chapter 9. Yeah, controlling resources in chapter 9. For problem solving, what would you all say, if you remember some of the steps to deal with in problem solving? This would be a project manager using a method for solving a problem. What is the very first step to solving a problem? Just shout anything out.
Find out what the problem is.
Yep, identify the problem. Very good. That's it. And then, as far as identifying the problem, the next step, if anybody could guess.
Would you define the problem?
Yep, exactly. So you want to break it down into smaller, manageable problems, right? It can't be one huge, overwhelming problem. So kind of break it down, start to understand how we can define the problem. And oftentimes that'll lead you to, maybe the root cause, right? So what would be our next step now that we've defined the problem?
Look for possible solutions?
Right, we're kind of not there yet. So think, now you've defined the problem, breaking it down into smaller pieces. What might you do next before you're able to solve that problem?
Prioritize. Brainstorming and prioritizing what you want to get done.
Right. Maybe you'll be doing some investigating, right? You need to collect some data. And then once you've
analyzing the data.
Exactly, and that's where you might start to see patterns in the data, some sort of trends, maybe the root cause. But now that you've identified the problem, you've defined the problem, and you've investigated and analyzed, now where do you think we are?
Negotiating a solution.
Well, that's good. But back to what one of the previous students had said, solve the problem.
Yeah.
So now you can choose suitable solutions, and there may be a variety of available, according to the PMBOK, a variety of available solutions. You solve the problem, and then there's sort of a final step, right? I remember this from 5th grade math. You solve the problem, but then what do you do?
Submit your recommendation. Use all your negotiation skills in your presentation.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably taking it to the, now that you're going to take this to a stakeholder perhaps. But again, I'm going to give you the clue from 5th grade math. You solve the problem, and then what do? Remember, you have to go back and...
Like controlling or monitor that the solution was good?
Somebody else was saying it. Check the solution, right? Determine because again, you always want to be measuring and monitoring. So you came up with what you believe is a solution. Now you need to check that solution to see if it did solve the problem, if it fixed the problem. So thanks for indulging me. I'm trying to think of questions to give you all, kind of just by scrolling through the PMBOK.
I've got one.
Oh, good.
All right. Here we go. The project sponsor has just signed the project charter. What's next? Anyone? The project sponsor?
Identify stakeholders.
I'm sorry, identify yourself by your first name, please.
Angie Rose.
Okay.
I was saying identify the stakeholders.
Well, that is a good answer, and it is partly the correct answer, but it's only part of the correct answer. Anyone else?
Develop a project management plan.
One more time.
Develop a project management plan. You're like moving on to the next.
There you go. That has to be the next step. Now, and let me point this out because I think this is important. To most of us in the real world, we know this is not true. But in reality, we're not studying, well, I shouldn't have said it that way. We're not studying reality, right? But for the exam, it's very important to know that once the project charter is signed, the next step is to plan, because planning includes everything for the project. In the real world, that wouldn't happen. I mean, how many of us have been called onto a project where the planning was already completed even before you were assigned to it, and for whatever reason, you were assigned nonetheless? Or how many of us have been assigned to a project in which the project is 1 quarter through the planning, it's been initiated, execution is in the process, but you've just been assigned to the project because for whatever reason, the previous project manager could no longer complete the project, medical issue or something else happened, right? So this is why you, again, looking at the exam from a fundamental perspective, we're not looking at the reality answer. We're looking at the chronological order that PMI has given us, and according to those steps, once the project charter is signed by that sponsor, the next thing to do is to create the management plans. Absolutely.
Hey, Philip, I have a question because
sure.
If you are in the initiating step with the 5 processes and you're still in the initiating step, yes, you're initiating the project charter, but you're also initiating the stakeholders, I thought, before you go on to the next process, which is planning.
Say one more time.
I was saying that if you're going through the 5 processes with PMI, the first step is initiating. So you're initiating the project charter, but I thought before you go on to planning the project management plan, you have to initiate the stakeholders before you go on to the planning stage.
Boy, you just brought up a very excellent point, and this is important for everyone to remember. When we're talking about the process, you're absolutely 100% correct. This question that I asked you was a pretty generic question if you really think about it. There was no specificity to this question. You could have given me some other answers, and those other answers within the initiating phase, well, would have been correct. But I bring this up, I form it to you as a general question, and thank you for bringing that up, because one of the key items that you've already seen is process is big in the new exams that have come out. So it's important when you create your 4x4 cards manually, hopefully, right, that you want to take this into account. You want to take all that encompasses that initiating phase. Are you going to be able to memorize everything? Of course not. But you just have to be familiar with it. So when you put it on your 4x4 cards, as you keep testing yourself, testing others, right? You're taking, a 15-minute break. Call one of the folks on this call and say, hey, can we go over this? Yeah. Cue each other. Yeah. Hey, I've got 15 minutes. And you want to go over these fundamental processes that they put in place. Because if a general question, or if a question is asked and it appears general, you may fall into the situation that I've fallen into, right? Because you're right. There are other steps before the project planning that you'd certainly want to take. So think about the processes, and in those processes, try to make sure you separate them and watch for the questions. So even one of the things that you'll have to be careful about in the exam, there are some questions that are 3 or 4 sentences in length. And the first sentence may sound like it's a general, maybe there's a general answer that you can apply to it. But when you read sentence 3 is the actual question to everything. So one of the things that, the reason we recommend the Rita Mulcahy book, the Andy Crow book, and for you to look at those exam questions is because it helps you to not only understand the answer, but understand why that is the answer. Because I'm a little prejudiced about this, I'm a Rita Mulcahy fan through and through. Always have been, always will be. But the Rita book, what I liked about that book is that every new edition that they bring out, it does a very good, clear job of telling you why this is the answer, not this is the answer, where other books kind of are like that. So anyone have Any input they'd like to put in? So that was an excellent example. Excellent example. Okay, here's another question that I have. Hold on. Don't tear. Okay. All right. Yeah, let's stick with that one. This would be an easy one to get folks a little more loose. The project charter is created in which project management process group?
Initiating.
Initiating.
Yeah, see, you folks are getting a little loose here. Now let me ask you something that is really easier than all of these. Okay, I'm sorry. The best time to assign a project manager to a project is during what phase?
Initiating.
Okay, please remember that. Don't allow your experiences of being assigned during the project execution, in which you had no hand in the planning, right? Because some of the questions that you'll be asked, if you don't read them thoroughly, these 3 or 4 sentence questions are your situational questions. So if you don't read those thoroughly, normally your question is not going to be the first sentence. So be careful, because you may think it may be, oh, it's got to be initiating. But some of the, and I've had this through the years, where people say, well, I know I missed this question because it appeared this is what they were asking for. And then on my ride home, I thought about that question, and it was the 4th sentence that was actually the question. That's why I knew I got that wrong. I mean, they still pass, but, you know, you seem to remember, we all seem to be able to remember certain questions that just stick under our craw, if you will, and we just keep thinking about it and thinking about it. And then when we get to work, we want to ask one of our peers or contacts, hey, what about this question? I think I might have answered it wrong. This was my answer, right? So think about that, okay? And yes, that is the right answer. Go ahead.
Hey, Philip, it's Melissa. I just wanted to piggyback off of what you are saying, because PMI, they often will have questions where they will add extraneous information. And if you do see a question that is like a paragraph or something, one of the tips that I can recommend is that read the last sentence first and then go back and read the rest of it, because it is a timed exam. So you don't want to spend 5 minutes trying to figure out a question. You're never going to get through all of it if you did that for every single question. But they will have information in there that will have nothing to do with what they're really asking you for in that question. So the more practice tests that you can take and get used to answering those types of questions and being able to answer them quickly, that will help you when you do the exam.
Wow, that's an excellent recommendation there, folks. Very excellent. All right, here's my next question. And I'm going to get a little detailed because I think I've been pretty easy with you folks. Now it's time to get a little more difficult, if you will. And no throwing rocks at me, please. All right, here's the question. An output of the closed project or phase process is the creation of what? An output of the closed project or phase process is the creation of, anyone?
A new process?
Lessons learned?
Yeah, lessons learned.
You were close. An output of the closed project or phase process is the creation of. Anyone else?
Completion of the project.
Well, the answer does have the word project in there. Remember, it's the closing phase. So at the end of a project, what are one of the, from a corporate perspective, what's one of the key tasks that is very important? Because it includes.
Retrospective.
Well, what about an after action report?
Okay.
Administrative closure.
And everyone is right.
Handing off project handoff to the customer, I think, is the end of it. I think.
Okay. Well, after all of that, what are you going to do with all of your information?
The project archive.
There you go. Project archive. And you're going to see that on the exam. You have to remember, many large corporations will keep the project data that you've accumulated during your project time, and they will lock that in a vault. Because everything that you've learned, lessons learned, everything that you've learned from the cost of the different contractors that you brought into your project, and many of your, at least from a technology perspective, you may be bringing in contractors from multiple countries. You usually are, right? All that information is money. All that information is information you do not want to share with your competitors at all. So the way the question is phrased, all of the following occur during the closed project or phase process, and everyone was correct as far as the information. But what you do with that information during the project closing phase is you archive that information. If it's a $100 million project that you completed, chances are the information that you have in there is minimally worth half, if not more than half, of what the actual project costs to your competitors. Any other input? Okay, here's an easy question. Linear program is an example of what type of project selection criteria? See how easy these are becoming? Anyone?
Say it again, Phil.
Linear programming is an example of what type of project selection criteria?
Waterfall.
And I have, no, but that was a good try. Linear program is an example of what type of project selection criteria? You've not had this yet. That's why most of you, if not all of you, can't answer it. The right answer is constraint optimization, okay? And this will, I know I pulled a sneaky one on you folks. I'm not going to apologize for it because I enjoyed it. But you will be running over this in the next couple of slides. Hey, it's been a long week so far, and I'm sorry, but I did enjoy that. So please put the rocks down. I'm going back to the other question. I know, but it felt so good, I'm telling you. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, let me go back. Okay, let me go back so I don't get beat up by everyone later. Okay. No, I didn't want. Okay, this is a good one. All of the following occur during the planning process group, except. All of the following occur during the planning process group, except there is develop the project charter, create the WBS, estimate the cost, sequence activities. One more time. All of the following occur during the planning process group. A, develop a project charter. B, create a WBS. C, estimate costs. D, sequence activities.
Create the project charter.
Develop project charter.
A, the first one. Develop project charter.
Okay, I thought I was giving you a more difficult one, but you guys ate that up too easily. All right, let me look for another question that is easier than that one. Only kidding, I'm not going to the other chapter. Though I do, okay, I better not. Which of the following is a characteristic of project management process? Iterative, unique, unnecessary, standardized. I'll read it one more time. which of the following is a characteristic of the project management processes? Iterative, unique, unnecessary, standardized. Explain your answer.
Because it, you have to keep going back to redo whatever is necessary and within the project.
Yeah, but that wasn't one of the one of the possible answers. I'll read it again. Which of the following is a characteristic of project management processes? Iterative, unique, unnecessary, or standardized?
I think standardized.
Iterative.
Because they're all
Iterative.
Okay, I heard a few for standardized, which is the incorrect answer.
Oh.
Iterative.
Iterative, yeah.
Yeah, there's no way it would be unnecessary because, right? And there's and unique. You could clearly eliminate unnecessary and unique from there. The answer is iterative. Absolutely. So this here is giving you a hint as to how you may want to look at your 4x4 cards, right? And get and start looking at one from a process perspective, because the process perspective, the persons that are part of this project, obviously we don't know what the complete breakdown is because they've just given us domains where in the past we can at least break down into initiating, planning, executing, monitor, control, and closing. So that's just, I think, something that we're going to learn over time. I don't think the exam is going to be as difficult. As a matter of fact, my niece just finished the PMP exam, and she passed, and she's going to take a week off of mental recovery, right? So it's not, I know that we say, and it's true, that is the hardest exam I've ever taken in my life. But, and if I'm not paying attention to, as I did before, if I'm not paying attention to the instructor, if I'm not paying attention to my mentors or my peers that are also studying this, it's possible for the first time I may not pass that exam. But if you're paying attention to these details, it helps you as you compile your 4x4 cards so that you begin to start getting that within your mind. Now, let me ask this question, and let me just hear a yes if it applies to you, and I'll get a sense by how many people say yes, so get ready to unmute. How many of you have already taken practice exams?
Me.
Yes.
1, 2, 3, 4,
yes.
6, 7. Okay, excellent. And I'm imagining that there are more of you that have done this. Always remember that the exams that you find, you'll find them in the Read a Book if you have the Read a Book, the Andy Crow book. You could borrow those books. Heck, you could go actually to the library and borrow the book from the library. But what I want you to remember in all of this is that keep monitoring your exams, right? If you take a 25 question exam, well, out of the 25, how many did you get right? And start looking at that. Keep a record, because the record is going to begin to help you to focus. You're going to want to focus at this particular area, this particular domain, because you didn't do as good in that domain as you did in the other. And again, I remind everyone that there's some weeks that you're just going to probably take an exam and where you were doing good in previous weeks, you're going to wonder what the heck is going on. I'm missing most of them. My numbers are going down. Okay, that's called mental exhaustion. We all have families, we all have work, and we know work is rather challenging at times. Yeah, I think that's a nice way of saying it. Work is challenging, and in all of this, you will be getting mentally tired. You'll be going through the 4x4 cards, and heck, some of you may just look at your 4x4 cards and just think, maybe my shredder should have these and not myself. You're going to get exhausted, you're going to get mentally tired, and you may see a decline in the exams that you take. Don't be discouraged by that. Take a 2-day break. Not more than a 2-day break, but take a 2-day break. Give yourself a chance. During this time, you should also, since you can do it now, you could do it up here, up north as well. Go for walks. Get out of the house. And since the majority of us are working from the house, get out, get away. Take a break once in a while. Don't make it an extended break. Be careful about that, but please do so, because it will happen. It happens to everyone. You can't help it not to happen, if that makes sense. All right. Let me go to another question. And Deborah, if you come up with a question as well, feel free to bring that up as well. And that was an easy one that y'all answered too easily. All right. To obtain support for the project throughout the performing organization, it's best if the project manager does what? To obtain support for the project throughout the performing organization, it's best if the project manager does what?
Keep communication with the project sponsor.
You're on the right track. You're very close. To obtain support for the project throughout the performing organization, it's best if the project manager does what? And we're talking about process here. Do we want to make sure, one possible answer, do we want to make sure that the project management plan includes the management team members?
Yes.
No.
No?
No. To obtain support for the project throughout the performing organization, it's best if the project manager does what? By this time, you already know who your team is.
That's true. You know your team.
You know your team, absolutely. Anyone else?
Managing and stakeholders.
Whoa, that was a good answer. That was a very good answer. Not the answer I was looking for, but that is certainly good.
Communicate effectively with your the stakeholders to keep them informed what's going on.
Absolutely, a very good answer, and it's part of the correct answer.
Keep your communication plan up to date. Make sure your communication plan is current.
Yes, that is a good answer as well, but you've already done that.
Okay.
But now you're actually in the project. You're past the initiating phase. You're past the planning. How are you going to keep things, as a project manager, what are you also looking to do now?
Maybe making sure that you're sending the right information to all the stakeholders.
Here's the answer. You as a project manager, you will correlate the need for the project to align with this strategic plan. Oh, I left one word out. The organization's strategic plan. Can somebody tell me why that would be true? So the question is, to obtain support for the project throughout the performing organization, it is best for the project manager to ensure a correlation for the project aligns with the organization's strategic plan.
Because in that way, you're going to prove that the actions that you're taking with the project are aligned and are good for the stakeholders and maybe for the organization. So they are going to see that you want like for them to be good and for the organization to succeed. So you're going to obtain the support.
Absolutely. And the key word was they. They who are actually sponsoring you. It's very important that your project aligns with their strategic plan. It's part of your process. It's part of your discussion that you will constantly have with your customer. Because in the real world, the customer is going to ask you into their office as the project manager, not the lead project manager, but as the project manager. Again, we're looking at this from PMI's fundamental perspective. So there's no lead project manager in this. There's only a project manager. But as part of your responsibility, you have to ensure that the team is aligned with those strategic plans, the organization's strategic plans. If you're not doing that, well, in the real world, then you get a ticket to go back home, right? All right, so these are parts of... Yeah,
I got
go ahead.
a question for you. I thought the question talking about the project. So the main objective of the project manager is to achieve the project objective. Only the program or the PMO will try to align the organization's strategic plan. Am I misunderstanding?
You broke up toward the end as somebody, several beeped out. Say that again? I'm sorry.
So I am under the impression that the responsibility of the project manager is to ensure the project objective is achieved, whereas to align with the organizational strategic plan is the function of the program or the portfolio.
And that would be wrong. And here's why that would be wrong. A project management office is there to help you. That project charter says that you are large and in charge. In essence, you're going to a far, far away land because you've been assigned a $100 million project, which means for that project, you are the CEO, period. All the positives come your way. Okay, a few of the positives will come your way. Most of the negatives, because you're not completing this on time or that on time, you're the project manager. You're in charge of everything. You get praises, a few, for doing things right, and you get yelled at everything that even appears that it's going wrong. So as a project manager, you can't look at yourself the way we do at AT&T. You're a project manager, you've been assigned to this project, but you have an area manager, you have a director, you have a VP, you have a president. That's not what this test is all about. This test is these fundamental processes are saying you're large and in charge. And a projectized organization, they will not overrule your decisions when you're in this far, far away land. The last thing in a projectized organization, and I've served in a few, the project management office is there to help. That's all. You call the shots. You're in charge of that budget. That's a $100 million budget. That's for you to decide how it's going to be spent. So when you think of yourself as a project manager, again, don't think of yourself the way AT&T would think of you. Think of yourself as a project manager. That means everything that happens, every person on your team, every contractor that's assigned to that team, you're large and in charge. You sign those contracts. That will be your name on the contracts. You approve them. You will be determining where the budget goes, where it doesn't go. All these, all this is taken into account here. That's why when you look at the processes, you got to read those carefully to ensure you understand that all the support mechanisms that are going to make you because your name is on the charter that will make you successful. It's not the other way around. Am I making sense? Okay, I don't know if I am, but
yes,
did I make sense to anybody?
Makes sense, but I have a question. So as far as AT&T goes, you were mentioning, projectized organizations. So AT&T is considered to be I guess, a matrix, but that the functional manager has more control in comparison to the project manager. Is that correct?
Okay, and this is a good point. Just so we understand what the exam is looking for. Okay, AT&T is, as you stated correctly, because it will be a question on the exam, and it'll not only be a definition question, but there'll also be situational questions. If you want to think of AT&T, it's more of a functional organization. Yes. Within AT&T, there are projectized groups. These projectized groups have project managers that are assigned several projects, but we're talking very large projects, and that's all they're assigned to. They control the budget. They sign off on the contracts, just as PMI is teaching here. For the exam, make sure you differentiate on one side of your brain the fundamentals of how project management globally works today and the difference between how AT&T works, which is more of a functional perspective. On the exam, you will have that matrix that you just spoke about, a projectized, functional. Can somebody tell me what the other one is? We have projectized, functional.
Matrix. Balance.
Okay, I didn't hear the answer because everyone, one more time?
Matrix.
Balanced matrix, right, or unbalanced matrix?
There you go, right. So for the exam, keep those definitions in mind because you will see those under processes, okay? So we're going to open this up for just regular Q&A in the last 10 minutes. But if anything that you get from at least hearing me, hopefully I didn't bore people, is you're taking an exam. It's on the fundamentals of project management. Separate that language from your AT&T language. Because if you take anything with you into that exam, as I took in my previous job, I took my experience into the testing, you most likely will not pass the first time. The people that are going to have the biggest problem on the exam are every one of you on this call who's very experienced when it comes to project management. You're good project managers, no question there. But your brain is going to want to answer it from an AT&T perspective, which means you will not answer that question correctly. It's a hard thing to do. Even when I had to Bob took me back through the retraining to separate my experience from the fundamentals of project management. It was not an easy task. This is not going to be an easy task for you folks as well, especially you more experienced ones, because PMI tells us that the more experienced folks, around 72% of you, may not pass the first time because the habit of relying on your experience. So, I don't know, write on your board, whatever you have by your office, and just put a big note there, something that says separate fundamentals, PMI fundamentals from AT&T, even AT&T fundamentals or methodology, however you want to do that. It's very important you do that. Many of the folks that I've even those that took the exam and passed last year, they during the exit interview, they were very forthright and telling me that it was exhausting. They had the most difficult time separating their AT&T mentality from the PMI teachings and their processes and methods and their domains. Not an easy task, but it'll work. You just got to work on it. You got to make sure that you keep that separated and talk to your peers. Look at those who are on this call and call one another. The best thing you could do is take a 15-minute break and just call one another and talk about this, because talking is going to expose and is going to shed a light on quite a bit that toward the end of the 20 weeks, at that point, you're going to be very strong in a lot of areas that you didn't think you would be strong in. Okay, with that being said, I'll leave the last few minutes. I'll turn it back over to Deborah. She may have opened it up for some general questions, and we could go from there. Deborah?
All right, great, thank you. I felt that was really helpful. Melissa and I were in a little bit of a panic, wondering what we were going to cover this evening. So I hope that was really helpful for everyone to go through some questions and answers. And I would suggest that one of the key things that you can do as a student through this program is to find some practice questions and answers, and especially once you've learned the material, but just to make this material as root as possible. Questions and answers, questions and answers, questions and answers. So on that, yes, speaking of questions, any questions that you all have?
I can add one other thing too, Deborah. So
sure, Melissa.
When you finish this training, if you don't plan to take the exam right away, just make sure that you keep studying so the material stays fresh in your mind, because I'm sure you've all been to classes where you've learned something and it became cold storage because you didn't actually use it and apply it. So just keep that in mind. If you're not going to take the exam right away, just keep studying every day. If you set aside a half an hour, but just keep it fresh in your mind. And the other thing, when you schedule your exam, take it at a time when you know you're going to be fresh. So if you're a morning person, take it in the morning. If you don't wake up until 10 o'clock where you're really, fully functioning, then, take the exam later in the day, because you want to do all you can to set yourself up for success.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so come on, group, any questions?
Deborah, this is Wendy Robles. Do you have what we're supposed to be studying for Monday's class?
Well, it would be, so you'd want to go to where your materials are. Hopefully, they're on the wiki, but if they aren't, let me see what your next.
Yeah, they're not on the wiki. I mean, I know in the student handbook, just probably read the next chapters, but do we have the pin book sections we should be?
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. Just give me 1 second, because
Yeah, the next 5 classes are going to be on starting the project. So Monday's class will be starting the project part 1, and Terry Kidd is going to be your instructor, and Tim, I'm not sure I pronounce his last name, TSE, he's going to be the backup instructor.
Oh, okay, starting the project?
Yeah, starting the project part 1 will happen on Monday.
And I looked at the, let's see what it says on the worksheet. So if we're starting the project, I guess let me share this with you. For starting the project, we recommend that you read, that you're familiar with the PMBOK chapters 3 and 5, and then specifically the business processes that are described in sections 5.1, 5.2, 5.3, 5.4. So it looks like you'll be going into planning, scope management, collecting requirements, defining the scope, and then creating a work breakdown structure.
Great, thank you. I took a picture of that.
Yeah, no, good question.
I also think Chapter 3 in the Agile Practice Guide talks about life cycle selection. maybe a little bit related to the first bullet point in the handbook PDF.
Okay. Fantastic. So yeah, you'll be planning and managing scope. Any other questions?
Deborah, can you email this out to us? Is that the Excel file showing our what chapters to read?
Well, you know, I would.
I can just take a picture.
Yeah. I don't know if you received the other email that I sent, but a lot of bounce backs. I mean,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I just took a picture.
Kind of unfortunate. I'm really worried about those people who don't have the correct email addresses on Brian's list or his invitation, but yeah, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. All right. Anything else?
And if I can help anyone, if you have other questions, this is Melissa. Feel free to reach out to me. I'm on Q. I'm in WebEx Teams. We're moving to Microsoft Teams here soon, but I'd be happy to, to help you if you have any questions.
Best wishes. Talk to you all soon.
Stop the recording too, Deborah.
Oh, stop the recording. That's a good idea. You got to stop sharing.
Thank you, bye.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Phil.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.